Those figures are shocking. 170,000 children self-isolating. They're not at home sick in bed with COVID. It's just that they've been pinged effectively.
Basically, and what's quite shocking is the increase week on week. When you look at the data from week 24 to week 25, we had 5 contacts isolating per confirmed case in week 24, as opposed to 23 contacts isolating per confirmed case a week later. So that's not an increase in confirmed cases. That's the majority of this increase. As you rightly say, it's children who are perfectly healthy, who have maybe been playing an impromptu game of football, as happened to one parent's child at break time, and have been told, I'm sorry, but you're going to be out of school for 10 days. And this is happening to some children, not once, but over and over again. And living under this shadow of uncertainty is taking a huge toll on children. It's just extraordinary that once again, children are actually bearing the heaviest burden here and are at the bottom of the pile, when actually we should be putting children first, not last.
Surely, given the fact that children face almost no threat from coronavirus itself, this quarantining should be scrapped altogether.
I would like to see some proportionality coming back to this now. We've got to remember that over 80% of adults now have COVID antibodies. We know that children happily are little affected by COVID themselves. If we are genuinely going to start to deal with COVID like flu, we didn't do this during flu season. If children are sick, I do think children should be staying at home. If children are symptomatic, that child should be at home. But to be isolating swathes of children on this ongoing basis is just completely disproportionate, and it's unsustainable, and it's unfair.
Absolutely. And what parent would ever send their child to school if they were sick and if they had symptoms? I mean, we've, for millennia, well, not quite millennia, but as long as I can remember, if the kid's not well, if they've got a flu, they do stay home. This is common sense, and it has to be freedom of choice for families and for the kids themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other extraordinary thing about all of this is that the Department for Education appears to have never been tracking of these children who have been isolated as close contacts, 30 or so children. They haven't actually been tracking how many of those have actually gone on to develop the virus during that isolation period. So once again, we have a measure for which we have no evidence of how many infections has it actually prevented. It's extraordinary to me. Wouldn't you think that that would be data that you would be capturing to see how proportionate it is? But it doesn't appear that they have. This is not precautionary. Again, if we're really thinking about what's precautionary, it's not precautionary to have school closures by stealth, which is basically what we have now with so many children out of school.
And of course, those tests are not foolproof either, are they? So we're devastating children's lives on the back of potentially quite flaky positive result.
Well, we know that the FDA has recalled these tests and effectively told people to throw them into the trash. We're not doing that here, are we? We're saying children, test yourselves twice a week. With these tests, they really must be the most tested and the most isolated group cohort.
Well, there's plenty of evidence, Liz, that these tests miss quite a few positive cases. Yeah. They also flag up as positive plenty of negative cases too.
Yeah, they do. And I think that really, as I say, I think at this point in the pandemic, I'm struggling to understand why we're in this situation where we've got this huge disparity between a football team where one person or two people are isolated with the Billy Gilmore situation, and we've got school children they need their education, they've already suffered from this disruption, are being subject to so much more stringent rules, as you say, based on a test which is, flawed, I would say, at best. I just don't understand what we're doing. And I must say, what I've seen over the last week is a level of anger among parents that I really haven't seen before. Parents are incensed now about missing their children's events, their sports days, their children missing school again. This is just can't go on. It really can't.
End of term discos, sports days, school plays. These are really important rites of passage for our children.
They are. I mean, we're actually hearing the situation now where parents are standing outside the school gates or outside the railings trying to peek in. I've got tears in my eyes about this, peeking through to try to see their child, going in a race because their child has begged them to be there. And the Department for Education is saying that, the guidelines say that we can do this, but the schools are not doing it because it's just not practical for them. Logistically, it's incredibly difficult. The guidance came through late. So parents are now peering through gates, trying to see their 5-year-old in the egg and spoon race. And we know from our group, just from quick polls in the group, that only about 10% of parents, schools are allowing them to see Sports Day. It just beggars belief. It really, really does. I think it's just disgraceful.
Now, I use the word ping as a metaphor that, if you've had close contact, it's the equivalent of a ping, isn't it? You'll get an email or a call from the school or perhaps a text message saying your child's been in contact with someone that's tested positive for coronavirus, whether or not they've actually got it or symptoms. Clearly, it's a logistical nightmare for parents who were hoping just to get back to normal, get back to work. They've got a childcare issue. Who's going to look after their child as they self-isolate? But can you tell me what the children themselves go through when they finally got back to school? They've seen their mates. They're learning again. What do they go through when they find out that they've got to go back home and once again be sort of in a kind of virtual prison?
It's causing them a huge amount of anxiety because they can't even, it's not that they're just not going to school, they can't do anything, they can't go out, they can't play sports or anything at all. So I heard one really sad example yesterday of a child who was sent to isolate based on a lateral flow test, a positive lateral flow test in the school, missed the dance exam, missed the netball competition, missed school, and then it was a PCR test, said actually that wasn't a positive after all, but had missed all of that. And that uncertainty and that anxiety is causing so many problems because actually it stops children from wanting to do anything because you're actually worrying about who am I going to come in contact with? If this person has tested positive, am I going to be identified? But also the children themselves who have been confirmed cases. I've heard anecdotally as well of, those children feel guilty. They feel terrible that they've caused their friends to be pushed out of school. So it's a really devastating dynamic for children to have to live in. And particularly as adults are beginning to restore their lives, there is no roadmap for children's lives. Boris Johnson didn't mention anything about a roadmap to freedom for children or normality in schools. There's been no mention of this at all, of this catastrophe that is unfolding day after day in our education system.